ladies, and welcome back to another episode of Perspectives with Sherry. I am your host, Sherry Ryan, and this evening we are honored to have a very special guest with us, Angelina Mojica. I'm going to give you guys some background on her. First, I want to say, though, thank you for tuning in as always, or for listening if you're listening on the audio podcast. Over here, we are a safe space for women in midlife. We talk all things health, wealth, and empowerment, and all the wonderful things that feed those three categories. We've been doing a series lately on relationships, and we're now talking about empowering yourselves, finding your purpose, understanding that it's okay to take pivots in life and to kind of figure those things out. So we have with us an amazing special guest, and I'm going to give you all some background on Miss Angelina. First, let me say thank you so much for being here with us.
Yes, absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So, ladies, she is a dedicated certified family life educator and life coach committed to empowering women, strengthening families, and fostering thriving communities. She has a strong background in child welfare and nonprofit leadership. She brings warmth, insight, and transformative support through her coaching, workshops, and speaking engagements. As the founder of Empower H.E.R Steps, she leverages her experience and passion to guide women toward healing, confidence, and resilience. And that's an amazing thing. So, Angelina, you're doing God's work. Thank you so much for being here and talking with us today.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So, we're going to get right into the interview. Your journey is rooted in service and empowerment. Can you take us back to a defining moment that led you to become a life coach and eventually launch your podcast and nonprofits?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like my life has really been a journey into my professional career through the experiences that I was exposed to as a child, coming from a hard place. There was a lot of abuse, physical, emotional, sexual as well in my growing up. My family, and let me start by saying this. I understand now kind of how my parents were operating. They were just doing the best they could. I totally understand that. There is no ill will towards my parents. I love them deeply because I understand they come from places of hurt as well.
Yeah.
I just preface that as I explain things because, so my family dynamic was very dysfunctional. My parents, a lot of domestic abuse that happened, infidelity in their marital relationship. And the relationship I had with my mother was very enmeshed. It was kind of like I was her confidant, her best friend, but then she wanted to, when convenient, pull back. I'm your mom. You need to respect me and stuff. So the lines were very blurred in that. So it was hard. It was hard. And I think, too, she might have also had some mental health issues that were undiagnosed because I saw a lot of those like quick turnarounds as far as being very playful, but then immediately resorting to anger, which would lead to some physical abuse and things like that. So it was hard to really read her, walking on a lot of eggshells growing up. I was the oldest of four, a sibling group of four, and we were all females. So it was hard because I was supposed to be, quote unquote, the example for my sisters, also the protector as well. And so as I started getting older, and I would say myself and my the second in line, my sister, second to eldest, she also experienced most of that same abuse that I did as well. And so as we got older and more into our adolescent years, we were at a place where that wasn't happening as much, but then we were still left kind of with, how do we process through the things that did happen? How do we make sense of it? Because it did definitely scar the identity I thought I at that time.
Yeah.
And for my sister, she found, praise God, she found Jesus and
Mm.
the Lord a lot sooner than I did. Um, and so she clinged on to that and made a total 180 change for herself, running in another direction to better her life.
Yeah.
Where I was the big sister, the protector, kind of left there like, okay, now what do I do? I still
Yeah.
had younger sisters that I helped with a lot, but I still didn't understand who I was. So some of the things that I suffered with as an adolescent was depression because I
Mm-hmm.
what had happened to me left me with a lot of shame and guilt, and the expectation of perfection was very loud in our home. My dad did not like mistakes, and when we did, there was harsh discipline tied to that. So anytime I messed up, I felt like I was a failure. Anytime I messed up, I felt like, well, there it goes. I might as well just go down a blaze of glory because
Yeah.
everything that I've done, it's tainted and stained the perfection that I was trying to live in. Um, so a lot of guilt and shame in that. So a lot of depression as I, started getting older. And I started to, at 18, started to question, what was it all for? What was it all
Mm.
for? Um, so much so that I was ready to give up on like graduating from high school. I started to become more truant, more defiant. Um, and I remember being in the principal's office and she's like, well, what kind of life's out there for girls that do those things? And I'm just like, oh, okay. And at that moment, I'm 18, so I don't care. I don't care what she has
Right.
to um, but it was this one teacher that spoke some life into me. She actually reached out to me one day when I wasn't in class, and she was like, you need to get here. You're a smart girl. You can do this. Don't quit on yourself.
Mm.
And she probably doesn't realize the impact that it has done for me, but it really did get me back into school. I never at that point had anyone speak so positively towards me. And so
Yeah.
it was kind of enough motivation to get me through graduation. Although um, towards graduation, I'm still questioning, like, okay, now what? Now what?
Mm.
All of this has happened to me. I didn't graduate the way I wanted to, like with the good grades and the honors and all of that stuff. Like, again, a lot of shame and guilt because I feel like I
Mm.
messed up. I just embraced the mistake um, that I attempted to end my life
Mm.
right before graduation. I'd taken some pills and just fell asleep. But waking up groggy the next morning, praise God that I was able to do
Yeah.
that through His grace. Um, went through the motions of graduation. And then at that point, something just kind of hit me that this could be a moment of pivot for me where I can start again. And so
Mm-hmm.
I embraced that start again, went back to school. Now, still, coming from a very broken identity, uh, ended up getting pregnant my first semester in college
Mm.
and married at that point. And then we ended up moving out of state. He was in the military, so he got an assignment out of state. And so when I left, um, I thought, okay, finally free from the house, free from all of that stuff. Only to have my mom trying to coerce me back home, like you're not happy, you don't want to be married, you don't want to do this. So I had a lot of that playing in the background of my mind
Mm.
that influenced a lot of my decisions in my marriage. And then my dad called and said he was diagnosed with leukemia.
Mm.
So I was away. I was about 22, 23 years old. And so I decided to move back home. And at that part, there was some infidelity and trust issues going on in my marriage. And so I moved back home. I'm about 24 years old now. My son is now 3 years old. My dad's in the hospital with leukemia, 2 weeks away from a bone marrow transplant, and ends up with his lungs collapsing, getting intubated, and soon passing. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
been so fast, like it was crazy. And then I'm going through a divorce at this
Mm.
time.
Mm.
So going through that divorce, my mother turns to me a couple of months after my dad's passing and my divorce completing and says, it's time for you to get on your own 2 feet. I'm not here to take care of you anymore. You need to go. And I said, okay, I will. Again, our relationship was very estranged. It
Yeah.
was a mess. So I did. I left. I got my own place, put my son in daycare, and was doing it as a single mother. Only again, she was just back and forth in my life, so it was hard because she needed me to help with my younger sisters who were still in school. Again, I had another sister that was older. We were about a year, 9 months apart, so she helped out a lot too,
Mhm.
coming in and trying to replace that role that my dad left. Um,
Yeah.
so we do this dance amongst the four of us, as siblings, and then my mom for a couple of years, and I enter into another relationship that ends up being very toxic and suffer a miscarriage through it because of the violence that was ongoing. But then get pregnant again with my daughter, and I end up marrying this man. Um, and then when that happens, it's about 4 years after my dad's passing. I'm 28 years old, and then my mother literally drops dead. She suffered from heart failure, and she was 1 minute she was alive. Next minute, we're getting a call that she is being rushed to the hospital. She had flatlined.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
her brain had been without oxygen for over the amount of time that
Mm.
without it causing severe damage. And so by the time they got her incubated and on life support, I mean, her vitals were really low and she couldn't survive without being on life support. So we never really got to say goodbye.
Mm.
Um, and it was hard because we had to pull her off of life support, but there was no coming out of it, and so she was in a nursing home, and we just basically watched her pass away slowly.
Mm.
Um, and that was hard because there wasn't much closure for us. And I know that my sister shared a moment where my mom being the spiritual leader in our home, went from that after suffering her own loss with my dad's passing and stuff, to questioning if God was even on her side. And so having given up, like having lost faith at the end of it before she
Yeah.
passed, that was a moment that my sister shared with me because that was their last conversation that they had.
Mm.
And it's hard um, because she was the one that was introducing, a relationship with God to
Yeah.
us, only to have given up on that last element before she passed. So that was a hard moment when I heard that. Um, but she leaves, and I'm in survival mode because I'm trying to survive this relationship. My daughter is a year old, and it's a back and forth thing. I become a statistic. Took me 7 tries to get out of this relationship before I
Mm.
finally did. And that was my rock bottom moment. I remember living in a 2-bedroom trailer home with my 3 babies now. At this time, I have my son who's a year old. Um, and I'm just like going, God, why that ugly cry? I'm on my hands and knees and just, I can't, this is so hard. And I want to break free from this relationship because it's not good for me. It's not good for my children, but I just don't have it within me just to let go. And so I asked for his intervention, and I asked questions like, why am I going through this? What else, this is all for, and really just kind of pleading from a victim mentality and not really understanding things. But it was later on in church when the pastor was preaching on Bible scripture, Jeremiah 29:11. Um, and then it all just kind of fell into place. Like it just boom, 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 boom. I get it
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
Uh, the message in all of it that was being preached that Sunday was, be the light. You use these things to be the light in someone else's darkness. And
Mm.
once I heard that, it ignited my purpose.
Mm.
To take everything that I've experienced up to that point, and probably even further, because God knows my future,
Yeah.
to shape who I am today. And so I immediately got back into school, went back to college, and thank God, this is when college on the internet, online schooling
Yes.
started, so that to date myself there. But I was able to jump in, and I got a bachelor's degree in psychology, and then continued on to get my master's, and started working in the child welfare field at that time. Started with working with Child Protective Services, and just as I'm graduating and moving in this now new season of my life, I meet my third husband for that time, and really that marriage. I mean, he's a great person. He was very easygoing, and there was nothing wrong in our marriage between us. But he was really a roadblock to keep the second person away from me and my kid, my kids,
Yeah.
to roadblock that, so that I could continue to pursue these educational milestones in my life. And so once I stepped into child welfare and began that, that's when it was revealed that my daughter was going through her own abuse journey at the hands of her half brothers on her dad's side of the family. She was 11 years old when we discovered it, and she was violated and, assaulted, and really didn't understand what was happening to her. And that's when I just started to see my own guilt come up, parenting guilt, because I wasn't able to protect her. I started to see generational cycles and patterns happening in this moment. And so acting very protective, and immediately both her and her dad, both me and her dad, stepped in, and we severed that relationship, so they no longer had contact with her, but it still left the damage.
Right.
The damage. And so now I'm stepping into this moment of parenting a child who has been through the same things that I suffered as a child. And so there's a lot of guilt there. And then as she gets older, she's starting to rebel more. She's not wanting to go into counseling, and then ends up in her own domestically violent relationship at the age of 16.
Oh, man.
And so between 16 and 17, she's in high school, and I just slowly see all of her opportunities dwindling away because she's starting to prioritize this relationship over the things that, her future.
Yeah.
And I understand, and I get it. And I remember just talking to her and going, okay, but let's just get you through high school. Let's just get you through it. But it got so bad that there was a moment in that where I had to tell her, okay, you need to go, because I started to feel it strumming up a lot of my own trauma within me. To work with her, trying to be there with her, and I just kept getting frustrated as a parent, because I wanted her to listen. And you can't shake your kids, and you can't train them. And so I had to let her go, and she left, and she did. She left, and I remember being so angry at her, because I was like, all the hard work I did as a mother to try to keep her safe and giving her the opportunities that I didn't have as a child, and trying to just build her up for success in a college career and things like that, all out the window. She's throwing it all out the window, and I was so mad. But then God spoke to my heart in these moments, and it was about a 3-month time space where I didn't talk with her. And God spoke to me in that moment, and he said, you're not that parent anymore. And I said, what do you mean, that parent? And he said, you are someone that needs to mentor your daughter. You need to guide her. But you no longer can tell her, yes, you can do this. No, you can't do that. That's not you.
Yeah.
And you need to be the safety net for her, because she's going to come back.
Oh, yeah.
And you need to be there for her. And I said, okay. And she did come back, in increments of time where she had surgery. She had to have her gallbladder removed, and she had all these things, and we were in the hospital. I was able to be there for her for that moment. That was our reconciliation moment there, where we reconciled to a degree. She was still with the boyfriend. And then at that moment, when she goes back, I realized I've got stuff I've got to deal with, because I've not, during all this time, never dealt with the trauma of my childhood, never dealt with the attempts of suicide that I did, never dealt with the violence in the relationship, the miscarriage, the losing of both my mom and my dad, like none of that. And so I took this moment of separation from me and my daughter, and I turned to my husband at that time, and I said, look, I realize that I'm not. And what the Lord is doing is saying, there's no way that I can connect to my daughter and help her through her pain if I'm still suffering.
Yeah.
And so I said, I need to focus on myself. And in that moment, he turned to me and was like, well, if you're not happy, I don't want to be married to you. And I said, well, that's fine. So we agreed to end the marriage, and move our separate ways. But I was able, that opened up a door for healing for me. So I got back into counseling and started doing some coaching. And then COVID happened.
Mm.
And that, and as grim as COVID was for the world, it wasn't for me and my children.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. I call it God's grace for me and my children, because it allowed me the opportunity to pull my daughter back into relationship with me. Now, when I did that, I had to accept that she was going to bring this boyfriend with her, but she was also struggling through school. COVID slowed things down enough for that to happen. So I invited him back into my home and said, okay, this is the goal, graduation. That's all we're focusing on. Start working, both of you, and get those things together. My son at that time too was just starting high school, so he was doing that homeschools and stuff like that was happening in the world. And so as the school started opening up, and she and her boyfriend were trying to manage the relationship. And then one day I heard some confrontation happening in her room, and I pulled them both aside and I said, hey, we're not going to put our hands on each other under my house.
Yeah.
And my daughter knew the rules, and she knew it. I was going to keep her safe. And he decided that he wanted to be confrontational and argue. And I said, well, if this is how you feel, you can leave. Call your dad and leave. And I looked at my daughter at that point with total peace in my heart and all the love. And I turned to her and I said, and if you want to go too, you can go. And through the grace of God, he intervened by this. The boyfriend looked at my daughter and said, no, you're not coming with me because you want to side with your mother. And immediately I knew God was working. Yes. So I didn't have to do anything. And it all happened. He left and she finally pulled out of that relationship, graduated high school, ended up finding a beautiful man that has loved and adored her completely and has blessed me with 2 grandbabies.
Oh, so awesome.
That's when I started my own podcast, Good Morning Minute, during this time of COVID, because I wanted to give back inspiration and just, God's grace and love. And then from that birthed the Empower H.E.R Steps movement, because then I realized now is the time for me to tell my story. Now is the time for me to build this platform for others to tell their story. And so it's just been growing, since 2022, it's just been growing. And my career has also been growing in child welfare, because I've been able to work with children like I was as a child, as my daughter, but also working with parents and single moms too, as they try to keep their home stable and keep relationship with their children. So I've worked in several, past 13 years in several different capacities in that. But the true calling is just to serve through the experiences that I have, just to share what my experience was, so that I can give some hope to someone out there listening, to know that, if I can do it, you can do it. And you can define what that success looks like for yourself too.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you so much for sharing your amazing testimony. I think that you are the perfect example of how God will take your pain and show you in your pain what your purpose is. I say all the time, as hard as it is when you're going through your season, and you get through it so that you can help others. I always say, as hard as it was, how could I speak to a grieving mother that lost an infant if it didn't happen to me and I didn't survive it? Or how could I talk to that person, woman or man, that's struggling, knowing their marriage is ending, if I had not survived, going through a divorce myself? A wayward child, a child that dabbled with substance abuse. I mean, all the things that when you're in it, it is so heavy and so dark. But God is, like you said, I love how you said, God's grace. He does give us so much grace. And I think it's a beautiful thing when you can recognize, because some people get stuck in a victim mentality.
Mhm.
and never evolve to the place where God wants us to go, where we, excuse me, where we heal, come forth and can help others, because that is truly what your story embodies. And thank you so much for sharing that and being
Mhm.
so transparent. Because your words, your story is going to help so many. And I commend you for that. Um, so I have a couple more questions. You've worked extensively in child welfare, community leadership, and education advocacy.
Mhm.
How have these experiences shaped the way you support and uplift women today?
Yeah, absolutely. It helps give me perspective.
Right.
Talking about relating to people, like my story is my story, and it helps open the door to building relationships with another person that may be suffering through their own story or journey. Um, but it's it's not it's not a shared experience. So me working in these elements allows me to grow perspective. It allows me
Mhm.
to understand. I'm always seeking to understand. And that's why I like the nonprofit Empower Steps, because I want to learn about people. I want to learn, and the question is, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Because we, through these different channels that I work in and operate in, I get to ask that question to people, like, what happened to you? And then from there, learn what their foundation was that they're building their life upon and their identity upon, so that I can come back with God's grace and God's love and say, you know what, that's that's false, because you're not your experiences, you're not what was spoken over you or to
Yes.
you, or what you went through, and you can actually define what you want success to look like for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and create from this, because there's a lot of strength that you discovered in these moments.
Mm-hmm.
um, God's redemption, because if you go back and you look at it, you're never alone, because God is there.
Oh, yeah.
And the redemption that God offers us through our experiences allows us to be a beacon of light in someone else's darkness, once we figure that out, once
Right.
we're able to understand that these things happen to me, but they're not me. These things I experienced, and I put together the best definition I could for myself as far as identity, based on the information I was given. But now, as a person that can own her story, be responsible for her story, can now
Mm-hmm.
change the
Yes.
trajectory of her life because of that. And so that's what I've learned from these different things that I do about people, and I can help. That's the coaching. I can help coach them through their own struggles to get to the success that they want to.
Okay. Awesome. So many of our listeners are navigating major life transitions in their 40s and beyond, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
empty nesting, career pivots, rediscovering themselves. What mindset shifts do you believe are essential for women in midlife to embrace their next chapter?
That's a good question, because I'm 49 years old and I just left the state of Texas 4 months ago to start a whole new job in a whole new state. Um, so I think the mindset of anything is possible.
Yeah.
Anything is possible. Um, and to never stop growing, like to never stop growing. Once you become complacent, and once you start to kind of just um, accept just this complacency, and just accept kind of, this is it for me. Like if you have that mindset of this is it for me, then it is. Everything you say to yourself is true,
That's
because
right.
you're going to validate that in your reality. You're going to look for those things that just justify everything you think about yourself. So if you always have that open-minded perspective, and you want to continue to learn, you want to continue to grow, that's where youth, that's the fountain of youth right there.
It is.
it,
It is.
it is. It's the fountain of youth, because you always feel like there's something else that I can touch. There's something else that I can influence. Um, and that's the beauty of life, is that you can continue to grow in life until you decide you don't want to anymore.
Yeah. 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 That's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Um, let's talk about Empower Her Steps. It's all about helping women grow in relationships, self-care, finances, all the things. Um, what are some of the most common struggles you see midlife women facing, and how do you help them overcome them?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so a lot of it is relationship based. Everything
Mhm.
we do in life is relationship based, whether that is with your community, your career, your finances, and then those that you do, your actual relationships, your family, your children, and all of those things. I think as far as midlife goes, um, some of the challenges that I see could be single parenting, because there's a lot more of that nowadays. So navigating the dating or looking for new relationships. Also, financial stability. That's been a big one that I've had to help with as well. And then just a career mindset. The shift between just a vocation. I just need to work to get a paycheck, to
Right.
really looking at a career-based job. Like, what is it that you want to do, and not necessarily that you having to work for somebody, but could you create something for yourself and you be your own boss, like those things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Those are huge. Those are huge. So you've raised children, you've launched businesses, you lead other women. What has motherhood and leadership taught you about resilience?
Wow, that's a good question. Everything. It's taught me everything. No, to be to be flexible, and again, just to be open minded. I'm working with children now in a group home setting, and you see all kinds of behaviors. But in leadership, you see those same behaviors. You're just working with adults, and so
Exactly.
I again see, I listen a lot. So I'm like, I don't want to be the one talking the majority of the time. I'm going to listen. I'm going to be inquisitive and ask questions. I'm going to look at what the behavior is telling me, because there's when trauma is involved, or there's stress involved, there's something at the root of the behavior. So I'm going to look at what the behavior is telling me. Is this person struggling with an emotion? Because that usually is what it is, whether it's stress, at work, you've got people that are going through personal things and they don't know how to compartmentalize that. And so sometimes that leaks into their profession. And so that's what I'm dealing with. So a lot of it is just being compassionate enough to hear them and just kind of meet them where they're at, to the flexibility that I have to do so. Um, Same with motherhood. I raised two boys and a girl. And I often joke with my daughter and say, God knew I can only manage one girl, so that's what He blessed me with.
Me too.
So I'm just like, no, but and each of them understanding that they're each their own person. I think
Yeah.
that was a big thing as a mother that I really um, was mindful of, is they're each their own person. They're going to each respond differently to different methods of discipline. And when I say discipline, I mean teaching,
Yeah.
not punishment.
Right.
Um, Punishment's a different thing, but they responded very differently. So like with my daughter, I could have these heart moment talks, and she could spit it back at me too. She could give me these beautiful, oh, I really did learn and stuff. I'm like, let's go off and do it again. And it just, I mean, like that just didn't work with her. It was more like, okay, I had to like remove privileges, so more punishment for her. But um, with my sons, I could go, I'm very disappointed in you. And they would just break, it would just break them down. Like, I'd be like, oh my gosh, you're disappointed. But then they would do a behavior change. So
Yeah.
it was very different in those things. And it's the same thing in leadership. It's just fun. It's getting to know your persons, your people that you're leading, and tapping into what they need, being the support system, leading out of love. And,
Mhm.
love sometimes is confrontational, as far as I got to confront the behavior that's not working,
Right.
but let's find a solution, and allowing them to be part of that solution. You tell me what you need so that we
Yeah.
can get that done. We can remove the barriers and challenges and see the productivity rise or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was powerful. Yeah. Very, very awesome. Um, so I have one more question for you, but before I ask that one, because it's kind of like what you want to leave with the audience question. I want you to take some time to talk about all the things that you have going on, where we can find you on social media, how we can
Yeah.
support you, all the things.
Yeah, so I'm on pretty much all the social media platforms, and I don't, Angelina Mojica, that's my brand. So you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on Lemonade, TikTok, um, at Trends, LinkedIn, YouTube is my Good Morning Minute channel. Spotify, you can find Good Morning Minute there too. And then I have my own website, which is angelinamojica.cfle.com. So you can find me there. I mean, you can Google me.
Okay. I love it.
um,
She's everywhere.
so everywhere. And I mean, so just, direct message me if you're interested. I think some of the things that I'm looking at with Empower Her Steps is I do want to do some conferences. So if you're open to that, I don't charge anything. They're open to the community, absolutely free. I don't charge anything for these conferences, but I will bring speakers that I've met and really good, strong female leaders that are relatable. So it's not
Yeah.
your Oprah, it's not your Joyce Myers, but they're people that you could walk into a bank and meet and be like, oh, this is your story and you've done this with it. Wow.
Yeah.
Because that's the inspiration. I want people to really be able to connect to those speakers to understand that it is obtainable. Like you can
Yeah.
do a turnaround, you really can. So that's one thing my sister taught me when she was so young, when she did her 180, is that you can turn it around that fast if you so choose to.
Mm.
Yeah, so just opportunities to connect, to network. Anybody that's interested in being on my podcast or a speaker for one of the conferences, that'd be great. I'm looking to do an in-person conference in Dallas, Texas next
Okay.
year, summer 2026. I'm looking for opportunities there. And then also too, virtually, I'd love to do something else. I did a virtual conference this last June, and that turned out really well. So anybody that's willing to collaborate or whatever, just give me a call or whatever.
Okay. Okay. I'll be calling.
Wonderful.
Okay, and in closing, my last question, and you've given us so many powerful insights and things to think
Mhm.
about and meditate on just in sharing your story and what you've learned as you've come through things. But if you could leave one message in the heart of every woman listening today, especially those struggling to find purpose in this season, what would it be?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And immediately, the scripture verse that comes to mind is trust in the Lord and lean not on your own understanding, for he will guide your paths. Um, that has been the scripture that I am leaning on this season as like I said, transition from Texas to South Carolina. Mind you, I left my family in Texas, and
Mm,
I only did it because God's peace was with me. I turned to my daughter and I asked her. I asked all my kids, but as it started getting closer to this being a more a more solid move that I was going to do, I asked my daughter because she's got my grandbabies, and I said, "Are you sure you're going to be okay with me moving to another state 20 hours away?" And she's like, "Mom, you have given up so much of your life for us.
mm,
Go out and pursue your dreams." And so that was the piece that I needed to move into this next season of my life. And it has been God led and God blessed. Um, so that's what I will inspire as a word of truth. Trust in the Lord and do not lean on your own understanding, for He will make your path straight.
mhm.
If there is always a purpose, and that purpose has always been there from the beginning. Like this purpose has always been with me. Your purpose is you. Your purpose is your healing. Your purpose is your recovery. Your purpose is you stepping onto your platform to lead.
Yeah.
Be the light in someone else's darkness.
Ooh, that's so good. So good. Wow. Well, I have I'm going to let it end on that note. Ladies, thank you so much for tuning in. Angelina Mojica, you are amazing. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. Honestly, God bless your platform. I know it's going to continue to do great things. You have a beautiful light about you.
Mm, thank you.
Yeah. So, ladies, as always, as I say, continue to feed your health, build your wealth, and walk in power. And please come back next week for another segment. But thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, bye.